We are now joined by the State Secretary of Education, Dr. Jacob Oliva. We're excited to have you with us today. Obviously, we're talking about Arkansas Learns, the state's major education overhaul.
That's right. A school year just ending for a lot of people, but the district's already working ahead on what's to come in the next school year. What direction have you all been giving school districts in terms of how to implement all the changes with Learns?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. And you're right, this is probably the most exciting time of the year for schools. I know when I worked in school districts, the month of May was the busiest, funnest time of the year when you kind of go to proms and graduations and end of the year banquets. But it's also the busiest time for school administrators as they start planning for next school year and staffing up and building out master schedules and looking at professional learning for teachers and that they're going to conduct over the summer. So we've made a commitment to the state of Arkansas and educational leaders in Arkansas that once the bill was signed, that we're going to roll up our sleeves and work with them for implementation steps. And we've been doing that through what we call educational co-op visits. We have 15 educational cooperatives that are made up of the school districts in those regions. And we've been to every single one of them in the past 3 weeks. In fact, I've just hit the 6,000 mile mark on the car in the last 4 weeks, getting out supporting schools in implementation.
I just spoke with the Rogers superintendent. He was telling me that his team is meeting in July. They're going to potentially have to change around 70 policies as a result of this new education overhaul. They're saying they don't really have direction on exactly what needs to be changed. So they're feeling like, what are we going to do to make these policies on par with what state law allows if we don't know how to move forward?
Yeah, so I would say that the school districts are going to get all the information that they need. Once the bill's signed into law, we've acted with urgency in kind of identifying different groups, where we're calling them work groups, different themes that the different parts of the bills fall under. So we've identified 6 groups that we've put together and formed through a statewide call out to help write with the rules making process. So a lot of the rules in the law have to be finalized by July 1st of 2024. So we have a pretty good runway with a lot of the initial implementation as far as going through that process, because we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure we implement the spirit of the law with fidelity. When we're able to get it right, we know we're going to improve outcomes in results for students by improving into teaching and learning experiences. So the work groups are being formed. In fact, we have 3 of them meeting today for the first time. We're going to be clear and transparent throughout the entire process and solicit feedback. And we've even established a website or a portal that anybody can log on to at learns.ade.arkansas.gov, where we're going to make that the hub of the latest and most up-to-date information. So my message to superintendents is be patient. We're working with the process and we're going to provide all the update that school districts need. The last thing that we want a school district to do is feel like they're not informed or not supported, which is why we're meeting with all of these districts in their regions face to face.
So how confident are you then with these work groups just now starting to meet that districts will be prepared and ready to go start of the next school year?
I'm extremely confident. We have a strategy for improving learning. It started step 1 with the Learns bill implementation. And then now going through the rules making process, we're going to follow it, and we're going to do it in an efficient and clear manner. Any decisions that schools need to be made to get the school year started off in the 23-24 school year, those issues of guidance are happening through memos. They're happening through training opportunities. In fact, we're scheduling summer training and learning for teachers, for principals, for superintendents right now that we're filling up our calendar. We're extremely confident when we welcome students in the first, second week of August back in the classrooms for in-person learning. The schools will have the resources and support they need to implement everything with Learns, but not only just implement everything associated with Learns, but make sure that they have the tools and the support they need to be ready to have high expectations for student learnings on day 1.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the budget now.
Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about the teacher pay raises. We know the state is providing support to help pay for that new starting salary for teachers, but the state is not necessarily keeping pay schedules consistent. for those more experienced teachers who are maybe already earning more. So does this actually disadvantage districts if they can't afford to give large pay raises across the board?
Well, actually, I think this is a great advantage for districts because they now have the flexibility and freedom to develop a salary schedule that works best for them. And school districts have the flexibility to be innovative in their approach and prioritize what they value. Districts are able to achieve this, whether it's through recognizing years of experience, advanced credentials. So some school districts have some hard to staff areas, maybe finding educators work in special education or higher level sciences and math at the high school that they can create an incentive salary schedule to attract different teachers to their district to teach those subject areas.
What
So
about these
with
federally funded positions, though? You have this across the board for the state funded positions, but now districts are saying we've got to try to make this equal so that we're not losing these important staff members.
Yeah. So anybody that's funded through a federal position knows that they're called entitlement grants that we get from the federal government. Those dollar amounts change each and every single year. And we haven't gotten the federal allocation amounts yet. If you've been watching the budget process in DC, they're meeting, I think, in the next couple of weeks to try to get that across the finish line, and we'll start getting with those allocations. But supporting teachers that are funded out of those allocations, we're going to work with the school districts to make any amendments or adjustments to the federal allocations that they receive to make sure that they're included. We're going to make sure that every educator across the state gets at least up to the $50,000 raise or the $2,000 increase that was allocated and set forth by the intent of the legislature.
We were hoping you could actually clarify something on that $2,000 for us. Some people are under the impression it's a $2,000 raise. Then we saw a tweet from the governor yesterday that indicated it was a $2,000 bonus. Can you give us an idea? Should teachers expect a $2,000 raise or a one-time bonus?
It's going to go to the salary schedule that the school district sets. So the school district's going to set a salary schedule that's going to include adjusting those teachers onto that schedule with the $2,000 increase in their pay.
All right, a local superintendent I actually talked with says even with these pay raises for teachers, retaining employees is tough without them having access to childcare. So how can you see the state addressing concerns like this that aren't related to starting salary?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest parts about LEARNS is it's tasking our agency to take a deeper dive in the early learning space. And right now, there's about 5 or 6 early childhood programs that parents and students could participate in. And depending on how that program is funded, depends on which division or which agency oversees that program. Well, we're going to pull all these programs under the Department of Education and make sure that we're building programs around students and not the programs being built around who's funding the program, so that we can get some consistent data and develop a dashboard that's going to allow us to find out where families are participating in these programs and identify maybe some opportunities where we want to work with local communities, invest in starting high quality early learning programs. One of the early executive orders that Governor Sanders gave our agency when she first came in office was to do a deep dive and find out where all of the early childhood programs exist or don't exist. And the reality is there's some islands and deserts in this state where we want to work with school districts and civic organizations, faith-based communities, and invest in resources so that we can double, maybe even triple the access to high quality early learning program. We want any parent that wants their child to participate in early learning to have the opportunity to do so. So we know that this is a space that we're going to continue to invest in.
So this year, we also saw some tax cuts here in Arkansas. Arkansas Learns expected to create hundreds of millions in new spending over the next couple of years. We had that big budget surplus, but can the state afford to keep Arkansas Learns going in the long run if we don't continue to generate that large budget surplus?
Yeah, so when the folks that work on the state appropriations and looking at forecasting and they call the next biennial and beyond, they're able to use some sophisticated algorithms and methodologies to make sure that if the economy stays on track the way it is, that the revenue generated to meet the needs of investing in education will be sustained. So I feel confident that the legislature and and the governor are committed to the sustainability of this program, and will continue to make sure prioritizing and improving education remains at the forefront as a priority of the legislature.
Governor Sanders says only 35% of Arkansas third graders can read at a grade level. If that statistic is similar next year, would that mean that 65% of third graders are held back? More on to that, how many literacy coaches would you see it being realistic to get these numbers to what you would classify as an acceptable point?
Yeah, so I feel confident that if we get the right systems in place over the next few years, we can get to 90 to 100% of our third graders reading at or above grade level. And Learns is really doubling down in the investment in that early learning space. We've updated our early literacy standards. We're working on identifying high quality instructional materials for teachers. We're providing scholarship opportunities for parents to even participate in tutoring. And we're increasing access to literacy coaches and professional development for teachers so that we're implementing evidence-based curriculum around the science of reading and making sure that every child has access to that. What Learns also does is it looks at that third grade benchmark, which is pivotal in a child's educational career, because that's when you start seeing students learning how to read to learn. And it really tasks the school and the teachers to say, if there's some holes or some gaps in a child, before we just automatically move them to fourth grade, have we provided the interventions that this child needs? Is there a summer learning opportunity that may benefit this child? And if they do go to fourth grade and they're still below below grade level expectations, have some gaps in their learning, do they have access to an effective teacher, to a 90-minute literacy block, and an intervention plan that's written and developed for that child? So moving forward, we can fill in all those gaps.
What metrics would the state use to determine if this education overhaul is a success?
Well, the metrics that has been cited here and that goes into the state accountability system for school grades currently is an assessment called the ACT Aspire, which most of the schools just finished administering for the school year this year. As we move forward into implementation of the 23-24 school year, the state is implementing a new assessment, and it's a criterion reference assessment based on the standards that we expect students to know and learn. So that'll be the assessment that's going to replace the ACT Aspire. And we're in the process of developing the test items for that implementation that'll hit our schools in the spring of 24. So that's the assessment that determines the school grades. A lot of states also look at how they compare to other states through an assessment called NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, that measures literacy and math at 4th and 8th grade, and that's given every 2 years. So that would be another indicator that the state could measure progress or see some improvement in student outcomes with as well.
The school choice vouchers, a huge part of this education overhaul. I want to ask you a question from our viewer. Carol Schwimmer asked us to ask you, once a private school accepts Learns money, are they required to educate the child for the entire school year? She went on to say, if that child were to have to leave that school for any reason, would the public school then be required to educate the student? And then if that is the case, would a portion of that money that the private school got then go to the public school?
Yeah. So, and I think that's a good question. And some of those nuances is what the rules work groups are going to go through to outline. And I want to make sure that people understand that when you look at empowering parents and providing choice opportunities, we don't want to just see choice for having choice. We want to see quality choice programs, and making sure that students in private schools are held accountable and meet a certain level of criteria is going to be part of that accountability. And the way the Learns Act is designed, and it's even spelled out into law, is that a student that participates in an education freedom account to attend a private school, this private school doesn't just automatically get the money for the entire school year, and none of the money goes straight to the parent. It's the system that's going to be designed to make quarterly payments on behalf of the parent to the school for participation in that school year. So if the student stays enrolled in the school throughout the whole school year, then 90% of the foundation funding that the public school would have received would be used to go into the education account to make those payments. If families move, children move, parents look for other options. If they move within the school year, enroll in the other school, the private school wouldn't continue to receive that funding that they would have received if the student was still there, because the student's not enrolled in that school anymore.
All right, we got to let you go, but before we do, we just want to ask real quick. We know you've been doing some town halls across the state, helping answer questions about Arkansas Learns. Are you planning a visit to Northwest Arkansas?
So we've hit the ground running. And in fact, I was in Bigelow, Arkansas today, and meeting with superintendents and working with schools. I've been in the Northwest, and we'd be happy to come back to that area. We're trying to hit all four corners of the state, and we're going to continue to work with leaders, meet with families, meet with business folks, anybody that's interested in talking about improving learning. We're willing to meet and engage with all of our stakeholders. I think everybody that I've come across with in this state is all very passionate about improving learning, and know that we can do better as a state, and is excited to have a seat at the table and engage in that conversation.
Thank you for joining us, Secretary Oliva. We know you've got a lot on your plate, but hopefully this cleared up a lot of answers for some people in our viewing coverage area.
I'll come back anytime. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you.